Let me take you back to around April 2011. I had just discovered MLP about a month before, and I was in the process of working my way through Season 1. I saw all of the episodes in order, so obviously this was the 8th episode I saw. Up till this point I was enjoying the show. I certainly wasn't a Brony yet, but I was enjoying it enough that I wanted to keep watching. Then I saw Look Before You Sleep, and I was instantly turned off the show for about 3 months. It was only when I saw a random preview for Season 2 in about June 2011 that I thought to myself, oh yeah, MLP, I should really get back to watching that. And I'm glad I did, because I got through the rest of the season no trouble at all, and I was proud to call myself a Brony when I had finished. So why would Look Before You Sleep turn me off the show in such an emphatic way? I honestly don't know, because this certainly isn't a bad episode. But I will try to figure that out in this review. First of all, this is definitely an episode that needed to be an early one. It wouldn't make any sense for Rarity and Applejack to be fighting like this in a Season 2 or 3 episode, after everything they've been through together. At this stage, however, it does make sense that they are still getting to know each other. They may have both grown up in Ponyville, but that doesn't mean that they knew each other as Phillies. Ponyville is a fairly big town after all. In fact, it's very possible they had never actually met each other before the events of the Friendship is Magic two-parter. It's also an excellent way to better develop the two of them, and properly define their characters. Now that I really think about it, these were the only 2 members of the main 6 that had not yet had an episode that properly defined their character. Twilight had had the Friendship is Magic two-parter, Rainbow and Pinkie had Griffin the Brush-Off, and Fluttershy had Dragonshy. It's also pretty cool how, aside from the opening scene, the entire episode takes place in Twilight's house and features only 3 characters, which I think makes this what's known as a bottle episode. No vast or dramatic change of setting, no action scenes. Okay, maybe 1. No dance or song numbers, no vast cast of characters to share the limelight, just Applejack, Rarity and Twilight's interactions and dialogue to carry the entire episode. A real test of good writing. So let's talk about these character interactions. The conflict between Applejack and Rarity seemed a bit forced at times. It always seemed to me like one of them was quite obviously in the right and the other is simply making things difficult for them, either for the sake of it or just to be childish. For example, Applejack is trying to take down the loose branches to make sure they don't do any damage, and Rarity just doesn't want her to. Rarity asks Applejack to clean her muddy hooves so that she doesn't make a mess in Twilight's house, and Applejack just doesn't want to. And Rarity tries to make the bed, but Applejack deliberately messes it up. Just because. There is literally no time when you can relate to what both of them are doing or saying. Either Applejack is clearly in the right, or Rarity is. I'm sorry, but conflict between characters simply doesn't work if I can only relate to one of them at a time. The other kind of conflict we get between the two of them is when they are daring each other to be more like them. Why? Why should the other need to act like them? What exactly is the problem with the other being different from you? Like the ghost stories they tell. I get the problem they have with each other, but is there really any need to keep bringing it up? It just came across as childish and forced, the way that they kept mentioning each other's differences. But to be fair, I do think some of the arguments they have feel natural, like the one they had when they were wearing mud masks. The way that gradually became more and more intense did feel very realistic. By the way, the Truth or Dare game that they play is really just dare, as there were only dares used in the game and they were never even given the choice. But for the most part, it seemed almost like they wanted to argue with each other, and the constant are not, are two, are not, are two, are not, are two, back and forth that they had came across as rather childish. I also feel that while Rarity is very much in character throughout this episode, I'm not sure Applejack is. I mean, I didn't think this the first time I saw this episode, but now that I've watched her for 3 seasons, not wiping mud off her hooves and eating with her mouth open just don't seem like the kind of things Applejack would do. Then you have Twilight, who represents the middle ground between the two. I think that she is meant to speak for the audience, but this is kind of ruined for me by that stupid book she keeps consulting. Okay, so it works quite well as a quick gag to show how much of a bookworm Twilight is, that for something as casual as a sleepover, she still feels the need to follow things by the book. But it gets old really fast. By the end of the episode, I was just screaming, "For fuck's sake, Twilight, will you just shut up about that stupid book?" I assume that Twilight is meant to speak for what the audience are thinking, but since she doesn't really do or say much while the two of them are fighting, it doesn't seem to work. Maybe if she'd helped them to make up at the end, it would have worked a bit better. It's only during the scene with the blanket that she actually thinks to intervene, and even then, it's only because of that stupid book again. It also kind of bugs me that Twilight doesn't just use her magic to get that tree out of her room. Now, things do improve quite a bit in the third act. Applejack and Rarity actually attempt to get along, take each other's advice, and see things from the other's point of view. After such intense arguing for the previous 15 minutes, it's an immense relief to see them make up. I don't know if it was really worth sitting through all that bickering though. And once again, Twilight doesn't seem to do anything to resolve things. I did think it was kind of cute how you only see Applejack's head during the scene with the tree. It's also nice that with the abundance of episodes that would come later, where Spike is mysteriously absent, we at least get an explanation for his absence here.
Spike is away in Canterlot on royal business. I'm home all alone tonight.
Now I know a lot of you are probably getting pissed off at me bashing this episode, so just to be fair, let's hear from the other side of the coin and someone who loves this episode, Brony Curious.
Look Before You Sleep is one of my favorite episodes of all time. It is probably second only to Suited for Success as my favorite episode in the entire series. The name of the game in this episode is character development, and my god does this episode have that in spades. Literally every scene either reveals or develops new information about Applejack, Rarity, and Twilight. I think the amazing thing is that 58 episodes later, everything that's talked about in this episode about these characters is still relevant, and have all been further expanded upon. These two characters are obviously different, and this episode explores their opposition masterfully, expanding upon the surface characterization that has been established for them over the last 7 episodes, and really begins to give both AJ and Rarity some true dimension. The banter between the two over the course of this episode is some of the sharpest writing of the entire show, and I can't help but feel giddy every time I watch this episode because every syllable of their back and forth is an utter pleasure to behold. And AJ is again shown as the most level-headed and mature member of the cast, taking it upon herself to apologize first when the situation finally starts getting out of hoof. Their subsequent team-up, while Twilight obliviously continues to search her book for the answer, is a great resolution of the conflict, and their hug at the end shows that going forward, the two will have a beautiful relationship.
Thank you, Mr. Curious. While I obviously disagree with a lot of what you said, I really don't have anything to say against it. So unlike May the Best Pet Win, it's easy for me to understand why a lot of people love this episode. I just don't love it personally. Overall, Look Before You Sleep is not a bad episode. It has some good comedy, some decent dialogue which carries the whole episode, and for an early episode, it does a good job defining Applejack and Rarity's character. I just felt that the bickering between Applejack and Rarity was too intense, unnatural, and also came across as a bit childish at times. But I'm still scratching my head as to why this episode turned me off the show for 3 months the first time I saw it. Maybe I just had too much else going on in my life at the time.